Welcome to Chelsea's Vocation. Chelsea raised 2 children on the autism spectrum, Justice and Noe, into adulthood. They're the reason why she can't help but smile when she recognizes autism in another human, especially a child. Chelsea spent almost 2 decades studying this neurotype as a parent professional, learning how to better adapt her own behavior and the environment around autistic children to both encourage and foster their development. She hopes through this podcast that you might better understand how neurotypical people process your neurology if you're autistic, or how to better yourself as someone who values autistic humans and your relationship with them. Chelsea is a lifelong learner and expects you are too. So don't hesitate to reach out to her through social media comments or the contact form on our website with your own insights. If you're coming to this podcast after the first 5 episodes, you may want to go to the show and review 1 or more of those foundational episodes to know where she's coming from. Either way, we're glad you're here now.
Kate, thank you so much for joining me today. I am joined by Kate from Paws for Ability. This is the service dog organization that we got our autism assistance dog from way back in the day. My children are now 26 years old and 24 years old. Their dog, Reagan, was the very goodest boy. Back when I was first looking into getting a service dog for our kids, I honestly didn't know that that was a thing. I was watching a dog show on TV and just happened to be on as I was folding laundry. And the commentator, for some reason, kept talking about what breeds were great for service dogs and work great with children and make great therapy dogs. I had never really thought about it, but with 2 small kids with autism and a husband who traveled internationally quite a bit, I needed more help and I didn't care where it came from. And it ended up coming from 4 Paws, quite literally.
I'm really excited to join your guys' podcast today and talk about 4 Paws for Ability and sort of what our organization excels in and how we have helped and worked with families like Chelsea.
And because it's National Service Dog Month, it just seemed like such a great time to do it. I know that 4 Paws provides a number of different types of service dogs. It's obviously not just autism assistance dogs, but I'm really honing in on this for my audience, which I'm hoping is families with young kids with autism. So what can a properly trained service dog do for kids with autism?
Before I get into children with autism specifically, at 4 Paws for Ability, we primarily place and serve families with children under the age of 18. And a large majority of those families are individuals who are living with autism. So typically, when it comes to training a service dog, each dog at 4 Paws is specifically trained for their individual, but today I'll be talking about 3 tasks that are widely used to support children living with autism. First, there is that emotional regulation and behavior disruption aspect. They have that same goal of assisting actively and or passively with children. Actively, we can train the dog to recognize and disrupt behaviors children may display relating to meltdowns, any stimming, any behavior that the parents would like the child to have some assistance with disrupting, whether it's fingernail picking, maybe they are doing some self-injurious behaviors. We train the dog to recognize these behaviors and perform a few different disruptions, primarily utilizing their nose to do a nuzzle or a bump where they sort of are poking the child on the shoulder to sort of help disrupt and redirect that attention to the dog rather than fixating on any specific thing that is occurring in their environment. With our behavior disruption, there also is the passive form. So sometimes a child just needs assistance with emotional regulation, processing sensory. The dog can provide deep pressure therapy through a command called over, where they'll position themselves to lay across the child. This can also just be utilized for that companionship aspect, providing that emotional regulation through close proximity, having the dog lay down and provide that calming, comforting presence for the children. I, as an adult, still display behaviors when I'm anxious, and my fabulous flunky, who was a service dog dropout, he to this day still disrupts some of those behaviors. As we begin to talk about some of the other tasks, it's really identifying what the family would like assistance with. Sometimes children living with autism have a tendency to elope, so we can have the dog provide what we call tethering or second leash, which can be a safety measure as well as a preventative. At Four Paws, with primarily placing service dogs with children under the age of 18, we do so on our 3-unit team model. So this is where we'll have an adult primarily handle and facilitate the relationship with the child. With our tethering or second leash task, this is where the dog has the potential to wear 2 leashes anytime the family is outside of their home. One leash is going to be connected to the piece of equipment the dog receives guidance from, so having them walk, lay down, sit. This will be the handler or the parent's leash. And then that second leash is attached to a piece of equipment the dog has been desensitized to. And this is a leash that the child can either willingly hold onto, or if there is that concern for safety with elopement, we can utilize a tether to connect it to a child's book bag, waist belt, child harness. The idea with this is that the dog is being utilized as an anchor, especially when it comes to also providing that child a sense of independence. With not wanting to hold their parent's hand, they may want to help walk their service dog or stick close to them. They have that sensory input from the tether. We can utilize a bungee, but the idea is that the dog is going to remain in their heel position while the family is moving out about in public, whether it's walking through a crowded parking lot, around the block, really just sort of integrated in everyday life. The dog is going to act as an anchor and has been taught to counter any pressure they feel. So if the child were to start to wander or maybe lag behind with the family, the dog will sort of brace and keep that child moving forward. And then that final piece is the search and rescue. So we understand that tethering can't be utilized 24/7, and children are very smart. So sometimes they do elope. We train our dogs to search one specific individual by their scent, whether this is outdoor in parking lots, parks, or crowded areas like malls. We teach the dog on command to find their person. And this is how they can provide that assistance with their family, locating their child. But we can utilize that dog to track and then sort of help with the child with grounding and sort of bringing them back into the picture. That's just a little bit about 3 of those tasks that we widely train for children with autism. However, each family has their own unique needs. So we sort of just have multiple conversations with the family on what they're looking for and how we can train a service dog to provide that assistance.
Oh, it's so good to just remember all of these things, Kate. And the funny thing is, our dog Reagan was trained for all 3 of those things, which was so awesome. I cannot tell you how helpful it was. What made us really different as a family is we had 2 kids on the spectrum. They were both young, so they were 5 and 3 years old when we applied for our dog. So I just want to kind of go back to those 3 tasks and see how that kind of played out in our family in real life over the time we had Reagan. That emotional regulation and behavior disruption. So Justice had a lot of stims. The stims weren't so much what I was concerned about, but like you said, some of that self-injurious stuff to kind of snap him out of it. Also, you said at the end, the dog can be trained to kind of bring you back into a sense of presence. Sometimes when kids get wrapped up in a self-injurious behavior or a stim that can be destructive, can be harmful, they're kind of stuck in that lizard brain and they need something to snap them back. Reagan was always with my kids, always near us. And so if he saw some of that stuff that Justice was doing, he would lay a paw on him real gently, or he would put his head in his lap if he was sitting down, just to kind of give that brain some other input. And my daughter Noe has a lot of sensory sensitivities. We always said when Noe was like 3-4 years old, she was like an exposed nerve. Like it was just like an end of a wire sparking all the time. For Noe to go to sleep, and Noe also has ADHD, she needed something to just drown out the rest of the sensory input so her body could calm down. Before we got Reagan, for a year and a half, it was me falling asleep with Noe every night just to calm her sensory system enough to close her eyes and let her brain stop going in a million different directions. And Reagan would come in, he would lay across Noe's little legs because he was 82 pounds. So laying across Noe's torso would not work out, and he knew it. So he would lay across her legs and it would provide her just enough chill that it only took her 10 minutes to fall asleep. And then he would get off the bed like, okay, my job is done. So that was task 1. Task 2, the tethering and the second leash. This was so cool with Justice especially because he has OCD as well. And even before he was diagnosed, he had these triggers that I just thought were kind of autistic perseverations. And we were within walking distance of his school. And for some reason, along the trail to get to school, he wanted to touch every prickly plant. Now, touching prickly plants is not a good idea for little tender kindergarten fingers anyway, but he just was compelled to do it. Having Reagan and having the second leash that was attached to Reagan's harness gave Justice enough sense of, nope, I'm walking my dog and we are going to school. We are on task. We are not going to stop and touch every prickly plant. It was the coolest thing to just watch his body relax, watch his brain relax in this new task that was so normal. Walking your dog to school is the most normal thing in the world. When it came to Noe, again, like just busy, her brain was busy. She wanted to go, she wanted to run, she couldn't be bothered. So while Justice was at school and I was trying to get the most mundane thing in the world done, like go shoe shopping, I just wanted to try on a pair of shoes without my ADHD 4-year-old sprinting for the parking lot because that was just what she would do. And I'm going to guess Noe was probably about 37, 38 pounds at this time, Reagan being at that like 80 pounds, 82 pounds. So Noe wore this precious little harness, and we would clip that thing to Reagan's harness, and Reagan would be in a down and he would not move, not a muscle, not an iota. He had his eyeballs on me the whole time as he was in that down. And here I'm trying on shoes and I'm going and putting them back and picking something else out. And my 4-year-old is at an angle trying to get away from the dog, and it's just not working. Physics wins on that one every time. Last one. Search and rescue. I did have kids who had either no sense of danger or had something on their mind that they wanted to accomplish and didn't think it was important to communicate it to me ahead of time. And it might have involved really unsafe things. I can think of 3 times over the course of our dog's life where I can't say definitively that Reagan saved my children's life, but I know plenty of drowning incidents and freezing incidents that happen to young kids on the spectrum that didn't happen because Reagan was there. One was when I had stopped at a house that I was going to pick something up in. Justice was in the car with Reagan. Come back out and Reagan looks at me like, you idiot, right? I mean, that's the first look on his face is, why did you do that? And Justice was gone. We always kept all of Reagan's equipment with us. He had his search and rescue collar. That's different because he knows that that's a different game than with his harness. So he had that collar on. We had the tracking leash with the flexi lead on it. And I said, find him. And his nose immediately hit the ground. He had his trail within maybe 10 seconds and pulled like a maniac. And that's the coolest thing. I know every dog is different when you can tell they're on it, when you can tell they're just absolutely locked on trail. And so Reagan would kind of S back and forth, and the tighter the S, the closer I knew we were, tail straight out, and there was Justice a block away already, heading toward a busy street, and no problem. Reagan got him. Justice was unfazed by the whole situation. Reagan was very proud of himself and got lots of good boys and treats. And then another time we were on a vacation. We were with several people in a house, multiple families, big reunion. And not everybody knows how important it is to lock those doors when they're going in and out of the house. And so Noe, I saw her little blonde curly head duck out a door, and I knew where we were. There were salt ponds in the area and very close. And I knew I could run out and scream Noe's name and it wouldn't make a whole lot of difference to her. But I also knew that Reagan could be on scent within seconds. I knew exactly what door she went out of. I actually didn't even have time to grab his tracking collar. Just put the flexi lead on him and we went, and he had her in seconds. And that's all it takes is seconds for someone to drown. So very relieved. Last time we were going to a meeting at the kids' school, and it was dark, it was cold, it was the middle of winter in Wisconsin. I was getting all the things ready that we were going to need to be able to go to this meeting, and Justice decided he was just going to walk to school by himself. Now, school was within walking distance. We had certainly walked there several times as a family, but it was freezing cold. He didn't have his jacket, didn't know how to keep himself safe. So grabbed Reagan and we found him. Again, I probably knew he was heading to the school, but I wasn't sure. And there's not time when it's that cold and it's that unsafe. And same kind of situation, we had a marshy pond nearby that probably had some thin ice on it. wasn't worth the risk. I know some people will look at the donations that need to come in for these dogs and for them to be trained and placed. But I have to say that it is worth every penny. And I'm sure every family you've ever placed a dog with would say the same thing.
Just hearing your journey with Four Paws, especially with the search and rescue aspect, to this day, I still get goosebumps. My journey on staff at Four Paws actually started as a training assistant, and I was the member on staff called the track layer. So I was actually the staff member the dogs were learning to find prior to being placed with their families.
I know you mentioned your fabulous flunky, and we also have a fabulous flunky. Not every dog has the right stuff. It is very fascinating to me how people will say, well, I have a golden retriever and I'm going to train it to be a service dog. And I don't have the kind of face that hides my feelings. And so when people say that, I'm horrified because not every dog has the right stuff. Just like you could not train me to be a heart surgeon, I can't do it. Doesn't matter how much training I have, it's not in me. And that's kind of how it is for dogs who end up being fabulous flunkies. Our second dog, Trigger, was a fabulous flunky. So Reagan was 9 years old, and for whatever reason, his health started to just tank rapidly one summer. And I freaked out because I wasn't ready for it yet, even though he was 9, and that's a pretty long life. I couldn't imagine life without Reagan. But if you know anything about doggy behavior, they're not robots, okay? Dogs have their own personalities, they have their own feels, and all of these dogs have their own vibe that they give off. So our dog Reagan gave off the vibe always of I'm the alpha. As long as everybody knows I'm the alpha, we got no problems. I just want you to know I'm the alpha. He wasn't a jerk about it, but he would give off the vibe like I'm in charge. So Trigger, who was 5 months old at the time, comes into the room. He's the cutest white fluff ball in the whole wide world. And Reagan takes a look at him and realizes, oh, this dog isn't a threat, no problem. Trigger immediately rolls over. They're drinking out of the same water bowl in a minute. Trigger comes up in Justice's lap, curls up, kisses his face, and it was all over, right? It was just all over. So when I brought this dog home then, everyone's like, oh, well, you're just going to finish his training, right? And he's going to be a service dog for the kids. I'm like, no, 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 no. He doesn't have the right stuff. It was interesting because I asked, so how do you know he doesn't have the right stuff? And she's just like, well, he has a suspicious personality. What does that mean, a suspicious personality? And it didn't take long. We brought him home on a Labor Day weekend. So school was starting on a Tuesday. The bus was coming to get my kids. I'm pulling some weeds while I'm waiting for the bus with my kids in front of my house. And Trigger starts barking at me, and I can't figure out what his problem is. And I walk up to him. He's behind our fenced yard. And he sees my gardening gloves, and he's very suspicious of my gardening gloves. So he's yelling at my gardening gloves. And eventually what that looked like is people had Halloween decorations, and he's barking at the decorations and growling. He's very suspicious, right? Goes past him real slow, looks over his shoulder. What's that? So I'm like, yeah, that's never going to be a service dog because lots of different things are going to happen in lots of different environments, and you can't be freaking out about everything. So perfect companion, our career change dog, definitely never going to be a service dog. I remember when we were taking a flight with Reagan, our service dog, and he was in all his service dog gear. And I put him in a down on his place. So a place is kind of a mat that you have. We had a blanket. So I put him on his place off to the side while I'm going to grab the luggage. The kids are on the place next to Reagan. I bring the luggage back to where Reagan's at and the kids are sitting. And this woman looks at us and goes, oh, I would love to bring my dog on a plane. What do I have to do to get a harness like that? And I was really annoyed with this woman, but it underscored to me a problem and a confusion that I think a lot of people want to take the Americans with Disabilities Act and make every kind of dog with any kind of training okay in any kind of environment, and it is absolutely not. And I think when that happens, it's to the detriment of families who have service animals, who need service animals. So can you just give me an overview what the difference is between a service dog, a therapy dog, and an emotional support animal?
Yeah, absolutely. So, starting off with our emotional support animals. These are companion animals that provide emotional or therapeutic support to an individual, whether it's with a mental health condition or an emotional disorder, simply by being present. You need a prescription or a letter from your physician stating that you would benefit. And from there, you can have it work for a dog that's already in your home. You could go to a shelter and adopt a dog. However, emotional support animals do not receive the same training as assistance dogs, and therefore they do not have that public access right. Service dogs, depending on the organization you receive them from, or just service dogs in general, have upwards of at least 2 years of training. At 4Paws, we start our training before the dogs are even born, really working within our breeding program to identify that best fit. As soon as the puppies are born, we're introducing them to different sights, scents, textures. So emotional support animals are really just dogs that are simply providing that calming, comforting presence just from existing. Moving into some more of the working dogs, we have therapy dogs. So a companion animal that can provide affection, comfort to those that it interacts with. So with therapy dogs, there are different organizations around the US that will have dogs go through training to ensure they have the right temperament, the right personality to have specific facility access. And they're providing that companionship and that affection for others. So visiting nursing homes, hospitals, reading events for children. Therapy dogs are not covered underneath the ADA because they don't have any specific task training to assist their handler or their individual. And then finally, we have service dogs. So underneath the Americans with Disabilities Act, service dogs are considered durable medical equipment that have been specifically task trained to work or perform tasks for an individual. So this is where that public access comes from. These dogs from a young age have been taught the appropriate manners and expectations for working in public, being task trained to identify specific behaviors and provide that trained response. So dogs are amazing, but not every dog has that right personality, that right temperament to become a service dog.
Is there anything you want to say as we wrap up?
There's one last piece of information I wanted to share regarding service dogs. So families starting this journey of a service dog, one of the biggest pieces of advice I would recommend is starting off with Assistance Dogs International. So Assistance Dogs International is a worldwide coalition for not-for-profit organizations that train and place assistance dogs. They're all over the US, international. There are organizations that can work with families who already have pets established in the home or connecting you with an organization that has their breeding program. So if you're not really sure where your first step would be, I would definitely recommend checking out Assistance Dogs International. You can include some geographical information and they can assist with identifying an organization that may be a good fit for your needs.
That's a really good point. Back in the day, there really wasn't any other option other than 4Paws. So thank you for clarifying that, because I've definitely seen some organizations that I go, it doesn't seem like the way. But it's good to know that someone's helping families navigate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was so great, just especially hearing your firsthand perspective.
Thank you for 4Paws for Ability, and I hope this is helpful to families if they're looking for a different kind of support to round out their family. This was a life-changing thing for us all, so we appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Chelsea's Vocation. We hope it was valuable to you. If it was, we'd appreciate you sharing it with someone, reviewing it, and/or rating it. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are published. We wish you the best as you learn, maybe unlearn, and do better for yourself and those around you. Chelsea encourages you to be gentle with yourself, be gracious with others, and be protective of your own and others' dignity. Until next time, take care.